In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 38, section 20, the open session portion of this meeting will be held remotely in an online conference mode hosted on zoom.com. Members of the public will not be able to physically attend. The meeting will be broadcast live on Comcast Channel 12. It can also be viewed via live stream at whca.tv and will subsequently be broadcast on youtube.com. We'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag,
the United States,
United States of
America,
and to the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty, justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
And we'll begin our meeting with a moment of silence. And while we do, let's keep in our thoughts and prayers all those affected by the jury decision today in the George Floyd trial. Like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved, Dan.
Second, Brian.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor, Randy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. A motion to accept, like a motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved, Dan.
Second, Brian.
Is there any discussion? Okie dokie, Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Randy, and I'll vote yes. Approval of meeting minutes, open session, March 23rd, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Brian.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Randy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. First item of business is a scheduled meeting, a public hearing with respect to the application of Maksharuta Incorporated, doing business as Whitman Liquors in connection with the all alcohol packaged goods store liquor license for a change of location from 682 Bedford Street to 421 Bedford Street. Justin, can you tell me who's here?
I have a couple of people. I will, let's see if I can allow to talk first. Ian.
Yes. Good
will
evening,
you,
members of the board. How are you?
Good evening, Ian.
My name is Attorney Ian Hedges. I'm here on behalf of Maksharuta Incorporated on the application for the change of location. So Mr. Vijay Patel is the sole shareholder and manager at the current location at 481 Bedford. He's operated at that space for about 6 years now. And he's moving about a half mile down the road to 682 Bedford. He was just presented with the opportunity to purchase the real estate there, which gave him the chance to move to a larger location and expand his business. From an operational and ownership perspective, nothing is changing. He's staying the manager and sole shareholder. So as the application states, it's simply a change of location. So
Okay.
with that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, is there any?
actually promote Vijay Patel as well.
Okay.
Oh,
Good evening, Vijay.
yeah.
Anyone else, Justin? And no citizens who are asking to.
Uh,
Good
there
evening.
is-
How are you?
Evening.
Evening.
Justin,
We have one other person. I'm not sure if he's, I'll promote as well. Just see.
KG Patel?
Correct.
Okay. Would anyone else like to say anything before we ask the selectmen if they have any questions? VJ or KG or Ian? Ian, you've spoken already.
My name is Vijay Patel. I've been operating there for about 6 years as a Whitman liquor, and we so far been doing well. But I got an opportunity to buy the building and move there, so I'm presenting to Board of Selectmen my
Okay.
application. See if we can move there.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Okay, well, I'll accept a motion then to approve the change of location.
I will make that motion, Dan Salvucci, the change of location.
Okay,
Second, Brian.
okay, if there are no questions, then we'll have a vote. Randy,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Justin.
You're
I
muted.
said a power surge. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Justin. And I will vote yes too, and I will like to congratulate VJ and KG on their move and wish you all the best luck.
Thank you very much, sir.
And thank you for
Absolutely.
thank you
Thanks,
for being
everyone.
here this evening, as well as you, Ian.
All right,
Thank
take
you,
care.
sir.
Next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 policy, the town administrator's report, and the first item on that agenda is the COVID-19 policy. Lincoln?
Yes, good evening again. So the board received a redlined copy of the current COVID-19 protocols for employees. We have this current policy that governs town hall being closed at the moment, and then also governs travel, optional travel, personal travel by employees. The proposed changes would make it clear that with the amendment by the governor to the COVID-19 travel order to make an advisory, that this would make it clear that now currently under the current process that employees, when they go on optional personal travel, are not required any longer to quarantine, since the state no longer requires quarantining. I would recommend that the board amend the policy to not require employees to quarantine when they return. So that's what these changes would accomplish. Employees would continue to be urged to avoid any non-essential travel, but nevertheless would not be under these proposed changes would not be required to quarantine or receive a negative PCR test. The one other thing that I just want to bring to the board's attention is, as an option for a change or not, is in the first paragraph of the COVID-19 protocols for employees, paragraph 1. It specifies that town services are available currently by appointment only in designated areas outside town buildings and shall not be permitted inside town buildings. I just wanted to suggest as a possibility that we could amend that to read simply that the public may access town services in person by appointment only. And that would, if that change was also approved, that would allow town hall employees and other town employees to allow members of the public into the building to serve them in the building in the event of rain and that kind of thing, obviously with continuing to have 6 feet protocol, social distancing, masks, etc. But I just wanted to offer that up as a possibility. I think that may help if serve the public, if it's amenable to the board. But that is the one sort of proposed change, in addition to the strongly recommended change to reflect the change in the governor's travel order, or now to advisory.
Okay, comments?
I have a comment. How does the Board of Health feel about this?
I've not been able to connect with the Board of Health regarding that possible change. I've not discussed with the Board of Health the proposed changes to the travel policy. I just wanted it to reflect the governor's policy. Was your question, Selectman Salvucci, specific to the
Coming
letting
into
folks
the
into the
building?
building? Yeah. I did not have a chance to connect. I tried today, but did not have a chance to connect today with the Board of Health on that matter.
I think maybe if we'd allow that, maybe we should, maybe if the board feels that way, allow them to meet in one area of town hall, maybe. You know, maybe downstairs meeting room. But the trouble is, if somebody has to pay their taxes or water bill or something, they want to go, you know, they want to come in and pay him at the collector's office. So, I mean, I don't know. I was in town hall today and I asked Dan, our agent, and he said we are still in the red, the town. I want town hall to be open, but I also want people to be safe. It's a real tough decision. I don't know. It's wow.
And one possible solution, and I see Town Clerk Don Varley, who's also on the Board of Health, reminds us that the Board of Health is meeting on the 27th. So, one possibility is to adopt the changes as you see before yourself in terms of the travel policy, and then you could have a discussion with the Board of Health next week and revisit the issue regarding the possibility of letting members of the public to be served by appointment into the building.
Okay, thank you. Lincoln, Randy, you had your hand up too?
Just two quick things. I guess if regarding the Board of Health, Dan, what we could do, depending on our vote, is subject to Board of Health approval on it. That could be one way to
Yeah.
fast track it. And my other issue, well, not issue, comment regarding the travel policy. Would we be better off just suspending our travel policy if in event all of a sudden this ramps back up again to try and implement it? So we wouldn't have to bargain, collective bargain. I know we ran into that issue previously. So rather than doing away with it, suspend it per the governor's order.
I believe that's addressed in the proposed amendments. I think that would allow for that, specifically with the language, which would say, rather than all visitors and returning residents entering Massachusetts are advised to follow the Commonwealth Massachusetts travel advisory. And then further says, if the current quarantine advice is changed to a requirement, so that is to say, if the advisory changes back to a requirement, employees shall submit a travel notice and shall quarantine, et cetera. So I do believe that if it reverts back to a requirement from an advisory, that this would, that we would automatically revert to our old process of requiring quarantining or the negative PCR test and
Yeah.
requiring employees to use their time if they were not able to produce that test.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Right, that's under B, I think, 8B. Okay.
Correct, 8B, yes.
Okay, did you have your hand up, Brian?
Oh, I both Dan and Randy covered exactly how I'm thinking. So Lincoln's explanation, I think will work for me.
Okay. As far as opening up the town hall to people who don't want to stand outside in the rain if it's raining, I do think we need to consult with the Board of Health first on that. We are still in the red. So and we've been following the Board of Health's recommendations all along. So I think I would feel a lot better if Lincoln, if you would ask the Board of Health to contact them, ask them to discuss this at their next meeting. And we'll take some advice from them. But otherwise, right now, I think what I'd like to do is just deal with the travel advisory. Justin.
Yeah, Carl, I agree with you. And I believe we're still meeting next Tuesday as well. So we'll be
Actually, right now, we're not.
Oh, you're right. This is
No, there's no need to meet next Tuesday because we're doing a lot of business tonight and we push some things to tonight in order
All right.
to avoid next Tuesday. That's why we're adding to our agenda, setting May's schedule at the end of this meeting. Okay.
Well, then never mind.
Okay. Okay. So can I have a motion then to accept the revision to the town protocols with respect to travel?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that, Brian.
Any further discussion? Okay, Justin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. And Lincoln, you'll be dealing with the Board of Health for its meeting next week.
I will. I'll plan to attend that meeting and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Is that it for COVID-19 policy? Is that the end of that?
It is just regarding COVID-19, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that we have been now 2 weeks back in the red, unfortunately. And certainly while vaccines are increasingly available and, as of yesterday, all adults are now eligible. Clearly, we have more work to be done with social distancing, personal hygiene, et cetera, to fight the virus. So.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the fire chief's hiring process. Lincoln.
Yes, so as the board knows, in speaking, with the chief and receiving his letter of retirement, the chief is retiring on July 9th. Per the board's instruction last week, we've called for a list from civil service. I know there was some desire, perhaps primarily on the part of the fire chief, but perhaps others as well, to have some overlap. So I just wanted to get a sense from the board as to timing on that process. And I know there was perhaps a desire to have an interview with the candidate for chief who is at the top of the civil service list. And just wanted to get a sense about timing and about process as to what the board's pleasure is on that.
Okay, does anyone have any thoughts? My first thought is you've asked for the list, correct?
Correct.
And have we received it?
We have. I actually believe that what we have right now is officially the official list. We're awaiting confirmation on that from civil service, but regardless of whether or not what we have actually right now is the official list, or we will receive it in the next day or two, we will have it in hand,
Okay.
or already do.
Okay. Okay. I think it'd be nice to have the person who's at the top of the list come to our meeting when we approve the list, approve the top candidate. I don't know if I'd call it an interview as such, though, because I don't want to be misconstrued that we'd be interviewing the person with the eye towards rejecting that person. As far as civil service is concerned, the number one name on the list is the number one name on the list. If we have an outstanding reason to bypass that person, that'd be fine. But I don't believe we'll be in that position. Let's put it that way. If anyone else has any thoughts, what I see happening at that meeting is that the current chief would, as this happened the last time we hired a chief, the current chief would present the name that the civil service gave as number one, and then the board would take a vote on that name. And I think it would be nice to have that candidate there. We could talk to him, ask him about his plans for the fire department for the future, and that would be it. But if anyone else sees it differently, let me know.
Yeah, no, Kyle, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, the new candidate or the new chief could introduce themselves to the people, and come across what his future plans are. I think it's a great revenue, for them to be able to introduce themselves, because not everybody knows who's on the fire department in the town.
Right. Is everyone else comfortable with that?
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll have once we get the list, we'll set up a time at one of our future meetings. One of the meetings in May probably doesn't. I don't think it has to be the first meeting, and we'll introduce the list, and we'll get a recommendation from the chief, and we will introduce the new chief both to ourselves and to the rest of the town. If that's satisfactory.
And it would be nice when he's sworn in, the person is sworn in like we normally have at town hall with the family and all that, but apparently we're not gonna be able to do that. Maybe we can do it outside or something like that in July.
Well, yeah, we can have time to, that makes sense. We can have time to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, well, I mean, where the family pins the new chief with his badge and all that. I mean, it's just,
Right.
it's memorial. It's really nice.
Right, okay. Next item on the agenda is an update on the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Yes.
Mike.
So I just wanted to update the board on this and let the board know about a few events that are happening in conjunction with this. So the town currently has a municipal vulnerability, municipal vulnerability preparedness and hazard mitigation plan. It is largely in response to concerns about what in particular may affect the town with respect to climate change. Myself, Chief Hanlon, Building Inspector Bob Curran, and our new health agent, Dan Kelly, have been meeting with Old Colony Planning Council to update this plan. And the fact that we're updating that plan is, because it's a good idea to be some, forward thinking with respect to that. But the even more immediate issue is making sure that we're in compliance with the state program. The grant that we received for the generator at the fire station was because we have this plan and we need to make sure that we keep this plan updated. So we've been meeting with Old Colony Planning Council to make sure that plan is updated. As part of that process, there are 3 workshops open to the public that are required as we go through this plan updating process. We will also put this on the calendar, on the town's website calendar, but they are going to be each day beginning at 10 a.m. via Zoom on Wednesday, April 28th, Friday, April 30th, and Wednesday, May 5th. So we'll put that information up there. Certainly encourage anyone who has an interest in this subject, and in particular, an interest in the climate change issues and how recommendations on what particularly folks believe will affect Whitman as far as hazards go, and how to address those hazards going forward. Any member of the public is welcome and encouraged to participate in those workshops, any or all of them. So I want to make sure the board was updated on that. Any questions on that?
Okay, any questions? Does anyone have any comments or questions?
No.
Okay,
Probably see me at one of them.
There you go.
very good. Moving right along, the Whitman Middle School MBSA status update.
Yes. So last week, the Massachusetts School Building Authority took a vote to move the Whitman Middle School project onto a feasibility study, what's known as Module 2. Myself, Fred Small from the school committee, Superintendent Simonak, and other folks from the school staff participated in that meeting. We're very pleased to have that approval. We received that approval from the Mass School Building Authority beyond over and above many different municipalities and school districts throughout the state. So it's certainly an accomplishment to be moved forward on the list there, and looking forward to hopefully receiving a promise of reimbursement for a future middle school project. The primary point of decision for stakeholders going forward during this feasibility process, while the feasibility process is going on, is to determine whether or not the Whitman Middle School, a new Whitman Middle School, whether it's new or renovated, will be a grade 6 to 8 school or a 5 to 8 school. The middle school building committee will be meeting again this coming Monday to further discuss that, and certainly other stakeholders, including the board here, certainly I believe will have a role in determining what the policy directive is on that as to which grades will be in this school as the feasibility study goes forward. So just want to make sure the board knew the good news about being moved to Module 2 and some of the policy decisions that are upcoming regarding that project.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, Randy.
I sit on that committee with Lincoln, and again, just to echo, it was a fantastic feat to get picked, and big decisions ahead. And I think all of the Whitman representatives on that committee, it's about getting the project done in the most fiscally responsible way that will ultimately benefit our students. I know there's been quite a bit of discussion, like Lincoln said, over the 5 through 8 or the 6 through 8. Just to reiterate, nothing has been set in stone yet. There still is quite a bit of discussion going forward, and I just wouldn't want the people out there right now thinking that decision had been made and a major change like that had been made to the education system. So it's still to be decided on, and we like Lincoln said, looking at both options.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Memorial Day.
Yes, so I've been working with our veterans agent veteran service officer to figure out what the maximum is that we can do to have, as active and special a Memorial Day as possible. Confirmed with Dan Kelly, our health agent, that since we are still in, I believe it's phase 4, step 1, that parades continue to not be allowed. That conceivably may change over the coming month prior to Memorial Day, but in talking with the context at Department of Public Health at the state level, it seems unlikely. So we've been thinking about what it is that we can do. The current plan, in some informal consultation with the Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, is to have small ceremonies at several of the cemeteries in the morning on Memorial Day to commemorate that day. Certainly welcome to other ideas from the board or members of the public about what else we can do to make sure we have a special and proper day, unfortunately without a parade at this moment. So I just want to mention that work's ongoing at the moment. The current plan is for the Veterans of Foreign Wars organization to visit the High Street Cemetery, the Knights of Columbus, St. James Cemetery, Mount Zion Cemetery, and then Colebrook Cemetery, including a firing squad, a gun salute at High Street Cemetery and Colebrook Cemetery on that morning, beginning at 7 a.m. So that's the current plan, at least, and making sure that the veterans' graves are marked appropriately with flags. But any other ideas that folks have that we can do to commemorate this important day, despite probably not being able to have a parade, are most welcome. So I just wanted to make sure the board knew that was going on and solicit any ideas that folks had. So.
Okay, anyone?
Yeah, maybe the sign in front of the library and the sign in front of town hall should make mention of the veterans.
Mm-hmm. Great idea.
I mean, I don't know if we have any of the other signs that are floating, that we got through COVID, maybe. I don't know.
Justin?
Just to comply with the mandate of the CARES Act on the money we spent on that sign, make mention that the parade was canceled due to COVID-19, and at least include that in the message somewhere.
Right.
Good idea.
Brilliant connection, Justin. That's good.
And I would just ask that we reach out to the cable company to make sure we record and air that ceremony at some point.
Yeah.
And just a suggestion that when you're talking to them, maybe that they can run the last parade that we were actually able to have after that. And it would give some kind of a sense of the community seeing something like that would be nice.
Oh, that's a good idea, Brian. Anyone else? Okay. Next item on the agenda is town meeting, and there are three subjects under there. First is the budget, second is draft warrant, and the last is town meeting date and location. Take it away, Lincoln.
Thank you. And if I could just three other very quick items under town administrator report. Number one is in conversations with the Board of Assessors and Kathy Keefe, the Community Preservation Act surcharge that was approved by the voters at last November's general election will be, there was conversation, this is in the first year in fiscal year 2022, upcoming beginning July 1st, during which it will be collected. And it will be collected on all 4 quarters of the taxes. So the first 2 quarters that the tax bill due in August and November are estimated tax bills, and then the ones due in February and May are the actual tax bills for fiscal year 2022. There will be an estimate there for each taxpayer for their portion of the Community Preservation Act surcharge on the tax bill due in August and November. And then residents will have, taxpayers will have the opportunity to file for abatements or exemptions, and there are exemptions under the Community Preservation Act beginning in January after the tax bill is issued at the end of December or the beginning of January, the first actual tax bill. So I just wanted to, begin to get the word out there that that surcharge will be charged on the first tax bill they're due in August. Secondly, I just received, if members of the board recall, we had two recent dog complaints occur. One was resolved between the complainant and the dog owner. The other, I thought we were on a way to resolution at the end of March in phone conversations that I had with the complainant and with the dog owner. The complaint regarding the dog at Perry Avenue. It came to an agreement by the complainants that if the dog owner agreed that her dog, whenever leaving her property, would have a cage muzzle on, that would be an acceptable resolution to them if she agreed to that in writing. She did agree to that in writing, and that agreement was sent in writing over to the complainant on April 5th. Just received a note from the complainants today that despite that conversation and and that informal agreement earlier, that they would like to pursue a dangerous dog hearing before the Board of Selectmen and seek a larger penalty, a more I don't want to say severe, but a larger penalty than simply requiring or getting the assurance from the dog owner that the dog would always have a cage muzzle on when it left her property. So I just wanted to inform the board of that. That's something else that will need to be scheduled in May. In essence, there's a hearing. The complainant may make testimony under oath according to the law, and then the board may decide if the dog, if no further action should happen, if the dog is a quote nuisance dog according to the law, and then certain penalties can be imposed, or the board can decide it is a dangerous dog and more severe penalties can be imposed. So I just wanted to inform the board about that. And again, that is something that we'll need to schedule in May.
Lincoln, was there a response back from the dog owner, not the complainant, from the dog owner, that he or she would comply with the muzzle with the muzzle?
There was. So the informal.
So there were signed things going back and forth.
That is correct. So there were emails going back and forth, the conversations, and both sides agreed that would be, at the time, that would be an acceptable resolution, that the dog owner agreed in writing to always have a cage muzzle on the dog when the dog left the property. The dog owner agreed to that in writing, and that assurance in writing was forwarded to the complainant, and then we've now heard a few weeks later that that is not acceptable to them.
Do we have any idea why it's not acceptable now and it was acceptable then?
I did have a phone conversation with them today. Primarily, I think it's because their dog continues to suffer the consequences of the attack from the other dog on their dog. And they are continuing to bring their dog to the animal hospital for operations. And I think that the fact that they are continuing to do that is further troubling to them in a way that it perhaps wasn't a few weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions of Lincoln on the matter of a dog hearing? Okay. And you had a third item.
Yes, and finally, just wanted to, been speaking with Chief Hanlon and Deputy Chief Bombardier regarding a grant opportunity from the Executive Office of Public Safety at the state level, entitled the Commonwealth Security Trust Fund Grant Program. And the Chief and Deputy Chief would like, with this grant program, to purchase ballistic shields for a active shooter situation, hopefully, which will of course never occur, but to make sure that they have that equipment to protect themselves in that kind of situation. And so, unless there's any objection from the board, I just want to inform the board that that was the intended, that we're intending to put in an application this week for that purpose. Just want to inform the board about that.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that item? Okay. Budget.
Budget, yes. So if it's okay with the board, I'd actually like to take it slightly out of order and update the board on options for town meeting timing and place. I think probably the best option at this moment, with the concerns about COVID, and particularly the fact that the town has been in the red again, according to the state's color-coded system for the last 2 weeks. Had some conversations with Superintendent Simonak at the schools about the possibility of, as we did last year, using the field, the high school field, for town meeting. And originally we were thinking about June 7th. So graduation is, they're already set up on the field there with graduation, with seats, et cetera, and sound system on June 4th, Friday. Originally we were thinking about June 7th, Monday, similarly to last year, the Monday after graduation. I did have the opportunity to connect with our town moderator on Friday, and he informed me that he will not be available he'll be out of town on June 7th. But he did say that he would be available on June 2nd or 3rd. That's Wednesday or Thursday. And I did speak with Superintendent Simonak today, and he said 95% that is a good option for them as well. He said he just needed to get complete confirmation from the facilities folks at the schools that that setup would be completely in place for the possibility of the town of Whitman having town meeting on Wednesday with June 2nd, with a rain date, a proposed rain date of Thursday, June 3rd. So 95% that works for the schools. We don't know 100% at this point, but I did want to make sure. So I think if that solution, or very likely solution, makes sense to the board, they want to make sure, right now at this moment, town meeting is scheduled per our bylaws on May 3rd. I did want to make sure that at a minimum, if in fact town meeting is not going to happen May 3rd, that the board takes a vote to delay town meeting due to COVID. And the board could certainly, set the date if it so desires, as June 2nd, possibly, contingent on the schools giving the 100% okay that works for them. So that's, just want to give an update on the various work going on to try and find a good time and place that makes sense with all the moving pieces.
June 2nd work, it makes sense for me with the 3rd as a rain date. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, what time, the dates to start? I mean, the times. They're looking at like 6 to something or 7 normal day time.
Yeah, we could have any date. We could have any time the board wants. Probably, maybe 6 might work well. If that
Now, the last time we did it at 6, I think, right?
Yeah.
And actually, Justin, you're the one that's usually up on this. When is the sun going down on June 2nd?
I'm actually checking that right now.
Oh, there you go. Maybe Brian will get it before me.
That's so
June
funny.
June 2nd.
Because 6 worked out in August, in the end of July. I bet it's going to work out in the beginning of June too.
I can tell you it'll be fine because it's getting dark now. It's 7, and
Right.
it's only going to be on June 2nd. It's only going to be later.
It'll be 8:14.
There you go,
Right.
8:14.
8:14.
Yeah, so if we
And
could.
I think when we planned it last year, we were looking at an 8 o'clock drop dead time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So this will work out. And if we run over, we run over to the next day.
And we could always, I can explore that with the fire chief as well. I mean, we do have light towers now. I don't know if it would fully illuminate to the level that we would need, but it would certainly help.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to postpone town meeting until June 2nd with a possible rain date of June 3rd, or a possible date of June 7th if none of those work? And we'll have to work at finding a substitute moderator for that particular day if we have to go to June 7th. And that has been done before in the past when someone can't be available.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Provided that it's okay with the schools, because we'll be using their playground, right? Their fields, if it fits with the playground, with the
Right.
regional school system.
Well, that's the work that Lincoln's been
Yeah.
working with Jeff Simonek on.
Now, I have one question on that. Well, our town meeting that we normally have on the 3rd, do we have to attend and then make a motion to go to delay or to? I think we did that once before when we went to a town meeting, the moderator, he opened it, and then we motioned to postpone till another date, and then we did it.
We do not. The state law is clear that until the time that the warrant is fully approved by the board and
Yeah.
posted, that is not necessary.
Okay,
The direct involvement of the moderator, obviously, I had a conversation with him, and certainly his input is important and valued, but it is not necessary
Okay.
until it's officially posted.
Okay, so that's clear. The motion then is to postpone town meeting from May 3rd to June 2nd. Rain date of June 3rd or possibly June 7th, if it's necessary, if the 2nd or the 3rd doesn't work out. That would be the last resort, but it would have to be the last resort because that's when all of the equipment is available at the high school graduation.
one other question for Lincoln. Will the 7th do for the South Shore VOTEC issue?
I believe it would work out, and what Selectman Salvucci is referring to is that in conversation with Superintendent Hickey from South Shore VOTEC, and thank you, Selectman Salvucci, for being part of figuring out the solution. There is regarding the article that would authorize debt for South Shore VOTEC to be approved by all 8 towns that are members of South Shore VOTEC of the district. The state law specifies that towns need to make a decision on whether or not to allow debt within 60 days of the school committee, the South Shore VOTEC school committee, of their request. So their request was on April 5th. So Superintendent Hickey rightfully pointed out that June 7th would provide a little bit of a wrinkle in that. If in fact it is able to be, if it must be June 7th, well, let me back up. If it's June 2nd or 3rd, this is a non-issue. If it is June 7th, I have a conversation with Superintendent Hickey, and he checked with his bond counsel. They do have a resolution that they could pursue if town meeting must be June 7th, where they could rescind and reissue the debt, and we'd be within another 60-day deadline. If it's ends up in fact being on June 2nd or 3rd, it's a non-issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Justin.
Just a consideration, Eric Dresser from WHCA is messaging, it looks like just me, to consider posting the town meeting a little early. The last year Hanson ran generators and lights, and it was quite loud and kind of messed up the end of the meeting. So just a consideration if we want to consider, I don't know, 5:30, 5:45 for a start time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
we were pretty close last year, Carl, if I can remember. It was like ending right at the
Right at the time it got dark.
Yeah.
And we started at 6 last year, I think, didn't we?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing with 5:30 is people trying to get there on the way home from work,
Also a problem.
but that's something we don't have to decide exactly right now, I don't think. But why don't we, I think 6 is safe. Why don't we make it that specific? And if we have to come to some sort of, if we think we have to come to some sort of an adjustment later on, then we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Or we just, when it gets dark, we leave and come back at some other time
Yeah.
instead of using lights and generators and noise. Okay, everybody,
and
yes.
just one other question on that. Lincoln, have you discussed this with the water and sewer superintendent. Just is this going to screw up the bidding process for the sewer force main project if we delay a month?
I did have a conversation, so I attended the Department of the Commissioners meeting last week. And they did not indicate a big issue with having it being delayed by 1 month. They didn't, we did have some conversation about how it was likely because of COVID, the town meeting would be off, and they didn't express any severe concern.
Okay. Anyone else? There's one issue, at town meeting, we call for the vote of the town election. It's one of the things that we do. How did we handle that? How did we handle that last year?
Actually, I'm very glad you brought that up, Mr. Chairman. So the town clerk did send over, so typically we have a joint warrant. So that is a warrant that includes both the election and the town meeting.
Mhm.
So one thing the board could and perhaps actually should do tonight is to approve the election warrant for May 15th, and then later approve the warrant for the town meeting, the non-election town meeting. And just one moment. I believe the town clerk, just one moment, I'm sorry.
I can also promote her. She's waiting for the first item in new business.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I apologize. The town clerk, so I do have the proposed election warrant from the town clerk. So it would certainly be appropriate if the board wanted to approve that town election warrant this evening. That's I think that would be helpful, I think.
Okay, well, right now we have a motion on the floor to move town meeting. Why don't we finish with that and then we'll deal with the next thing. Is there any other comments on moving town meeting? Okay, a call for a vote. Brian,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Justin,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. We could wait for the time when the town clerk comes into our meeting to discuss early voting and then deal with that warrant. Do we have a copy of that warrant?
We do, actually. The town clerk just wrote in the text box, the hard copy is in the office. So yes, it is on the table awaiting your signatures.
Okay, so we could vote it tonight and then sign it
Correct.
later. Okay. And now I'm blanking on whether or not that needs to be on our agenda officially in order for us to act on it.
I think the fact that draft warrant is on your agenda,
Mhm.
I think I believe that's definitely sufficient.
Well, yeah, you're right, because draft warrant becomes not a draft warrant once we vote on it.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I
very good.
would suggest that's the case.
Okay, good. Just making me feel better. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we hit budget and draft warrant, Lincoln?
Yes, so regarding the budget, there did send around a document with a couple relatively non-substantive changes. There are, to be clear, 3 from last week's version. Number 1 is in conversation with the town clerk. The town clerk requested that the town elections and meetings line be combined from being separated out between salaries and expenses to be one line to account for, what maybe, might be some items that would be hard to predict as far as how much would be in expenses and how much would be in salaries. I think that's a reasonable request. And so the new recommended document has that change. Secondly, in conversation both with the town clerk and treasurer collector, I believe we spoke before about how, with the board, about how the state law requires that elected officials, if they are to receive a salary, which of course the treasurer collector and town clerk do, that salary, unlike other salaries in town, must be specifically delineated by town meeting and specifically approved by town meeting. What most towns do is have a separate article or articles that specify what those salaries are. In conversation with the treasurer collector on Friday, I think a pretty good compromise was reached there to break the salary of the treasurer collector and the town clerk out from the salaries in their offices and each of their respective offices, and have one more line in each to specify, so that town meeting may specify their specific salary per the state law.
Okay.
And then finally, per Selectman Bezanson's excellent request, there is a column that shows the percent change from what was appropriated in fiscal year 2021 to what is recommended. Again, the recommended budget from me, and when when the board approves whatever it sees fit as an Article 2 budget, that column would change to a percent change from what the Board of Selectmen recommended budget on the warrant would be. Again, from fiscal year 2021 actual appropriated to the amount recommended by the Board of Selectmen in the warrant. So those are the only three changes. Again, as I mentioned, there is no change to the bottom line. I did also want to mention, I received feedback from the Zoning Board of Appeals and Chair John Goldrosen regarding there is a $202 reduction from the eventually final request from Chair Goldrosen for the Zoning Board of Appeals budget. I want to stress that in the past 5 fiscal years, the Zoning Board of Appeals has not come close and has not exceeded the $5,000 total Zoning Board of Appeals budget that is in the town administrator recommended budget. And so to be clear, the Zoning Board of Appeals was in no way being singled out, but rather, like many departments throughout town, there were certain lines where the historical appropriations were not actually being spent for several years in a row. And several of those appropriations in my recommended budget proposal were reduced to a level that, to be clear, was not down to the very bare minimum of what historically actually had been spent, but was a reduction so that the recommended budget level was more in line with the historical expenditures. To be clear, part of all of that throughout, not just the Zoning Board of Appeals, but throughout all departments in town where that occurred, was part of an effort to balance the budget and make sure we used an absolute minimum amount of one-time revenue free cash to balance the budget. So did have some communication with Chairman Goldrosen, and certainly assured him that, I certainly recognize the really important work that the Zoning Board of Appeals does, and that if, as we get through and proceed through fiscal year 2022, let's say halfway through the year, if it does become clear that the amount that is in this recommendation, if it's approved by town meeting, is not going to be sufficient with the number of applications that are coming through the Zoning Board of Appeals, I know I would certainly be, at the front of the line to make sure that there are sufficient funds for the Zoning Board of Appeals to do its work. And if that does come to pass, that there are insufficient funds there, or it appears as though they're going to be insufficient funds, certainly it would be a relatively nominal amount of money to resolve it in the context of the entire budget. And it certainly is something that could be resolved through an interfund transfer at the close of the fiscal year to make sure that there's sufficient funds there.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
I had a couple of the members reach out to me just to ask why that happened, and if we could adjust or whatever. And I just wanted, what I took out of that conversation was that if they ran out of money and they couldn't do their proper paperwork, and I don't know the mechanics of that department 100%, But if they ran out of money, the appeal would automatically, excuse me, automatically get approved. So, you know, that to me is walking a little bit of a fine line where we might not want that to happen. So I just want us to be mindful of the procedures on how these things happen so we don't run amok with that process.
Yeah,
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, Brian, to answer your question, or your concerns, I think that if the Board of Appeals, I mean, if they feel as though they're coming close and they know how many hearings they have, right, they can always go and put a reserve, ask for a reserve fund transfer to the Finance Committee, where we're running a tight budget. You know,
Right.
that would seem to me would be the same thing like when we had so many meetings when we were choosing a new town administrator, how we had to add money to Laurie, our recording secretary.
Right.
And I had to go to their meeting and explain why we were running out of money. And this is obvious. We're running a tight budget this year. We're looking to where we cut. We cut $500 out of their budget. I mean, from what they usually have, if they have some money, some account, business that have been held over because they couldn't have meetings in the town hall, then I guess the best thing to do is as they're doing their meetings and catching up, when they're getting close, before they run out of money, do a reserve, ask for a reserve fund transfer with an explanation. And I'm certainly sure the Finance Committee would consider it.
Yeah.
Because that's what that reserve fund is for.
Yeah. And I know that their recording secretary has not had a raise quite some time, 9 or 10 years. So where other folks have been, you know, getting 2% plus, it was just, you know, whether it was an oversight on their budgeting process or an oversight in general, whatever, it doesn't matter, but it's something that I just want to make sure we don't overlook.
Well, to answer that, then we would have to look at all recording secretaries of all boards and committees,
Right.
whether they've received raises or not.
Right.
My answer.
Randy.
Just to piggyback on what Dan just said, that may be something we may want to have Lincoln do anyway, because I know recently, Justin, I don't know, a couple months ago, we found one was extremely under budget, underpaid, and we had to bump one up to, I think it was minimum wage.
Correct.
So it just may be something that we definitely have to look at. They seem to have, there's no continuity among these people that are basically doing the same job just for a different committee. So on your, just to throw it on your radar, Lincoln.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to that point, I'll be perfectly frank. I did not know until I spoke with the recording secretary this morning that she had not received a pay raise in that long. I don't think that's right.
Right.
I'll be perfectly frank with the board here. I want to do a little bit more research about comparison between different recording secretaries, but definitely, you know, equal work should be paid equally, in my opinion. I feel really strongly about that.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can definitely pursue. It's something that I definitely intend to take a further look into. I do think that, you know, that there should be equity there. To the extent that, you know, someone with the same qualifications and background and education should be being paid the same for the same work. So, but I do think, you know, as far as the certainly a reserve fund transfer could be pursued if there is an issue during the year with the Zoning Board of Appeals or any budget, and certainly it, you know, bring it to the attention of this board. And if there was a budgetary issue, you know, in going forward, you know, but I would say that a reserve fund transfer could be done, but it also could simply be an interfund transfer at the end of the year to resolve something of a, while this is very important to the ZBA, in the context of the entire budget, is a relatively small piece of it.
Right. Right. And I don't think that the hourly rate of this particular recording secretary was an intentional thing. I think it was just one of those things. And I just want to make clear that idea about how to do this budget and what you're doing to trim here and there, I think
That's
is
pretty good.
it's
Yeah.
excellent, and it's very proactive. And I think that's the only way that we can get through this is by looking at historic numbers like you did. So I commend you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It might be appropriate at this time then to, we've had a chance to look at the draft warrant and the budget for a week. It might be appropriate at this time to have a motion to vote the warrant as suggested by the town administrator. And this will give the finance committee something that they can actively make recommendations to. I think they're waiting for us to do that. So would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, first, all right, I'll make that motion for discussion.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay.
All right,
it's up-
Kyle, are we talking about just Article 2 here?
Yeah,
We haven't had
Sure.
we haven't seen all the articles as far as capital projects and everything, right?
okay, Lincoln.
Yeah, so I would suggest, so you do have a draft warrant, a complete draft warrant, and I
We
would
do?
suggest timing wise, now that, we know that at least, very, very likely the town meeting will be June 2nd. What I would suggest is, perhaps you could, if the board's ready to do so, you could vote the budget tonight, and then at the next meeting, we can certainly go into detail now with the rest of the warrant, if there's any questions, concerns, questions, et cetera, about any of it. Or perhaps at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, since there is a little bit more time, perhaps take it up then, the remainder of the warrant, non-operating budget. So it's up to the board. There was a draft, but it was a few weeks ago. There was
Yeah,
a
there was
draft.
a draft warrant and it doesn't have figures in it though.
Right.
If I remember correctly, it has no money attached, so it tells us categories, but nothing filling them up.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think it would, I guess from my perspective, it's obviously up to the board. From my perspective, might make sense, if the board is, wants to move forward with approving the budget as it's presented now, I can get those numbers into the budget, into the warrant, get the next, complete version of a draft warrant, and the board could come back and have a final, consideration of that at its next meeting. Does that make sense?
That would work for me. I think getting Article 2 passed tonight would be a big step forward, and then we can deal with the rest of the articles that we presented at town meeting at our first meeting in May, perhaps.
Yeah.
Randy,
I would make a motion, Kyle, to approve the town administrator's draft Article 2 as presented.
Yeah, I'll second that.
okay, does anyone want to discuss anything in the proposed Article 2? Randy,
First of all, I would just say, thank you, Lincoln. I know it hasn't been easy to get to this point, but given the pandemic and the deficit we faced, to be in this position that we're in is pretty good for this town. So I commend you and Ken, and I know Frank probably helped us out a little bit. It was a good team effort by everyone. I'll just run through my quick list of any issues or things I had. I think obviously it's a presentation change that you have some work ahead of you that we need to make sure this is properly sold at town meeting. I think you're going to be able to do that. My only other issue was I know there is a bump in pay for a potential hire that I would tell people that person is not hired yet. What we're doing is we're putting a salary out there to see the best possible candidate. If we open ourselves up to getting a high quality candidate for a job description that really hasn't even been developed by this board, I think we're just putting ourselves in position for success, but doesn't mean this board has to spend that, necessarily have to spend that amount of money. And I would also just note that I think out of the last 5 years, this is probably the least amount of one-time funds that we're going to have to use probably out of the last 5 years. And given the situation, again, I think it was a great job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, anyone else have any questions or comments? Justin?
Yeah, just to piggyback on Randy and the earlier discussion about recording secretaries, just a general concern that I've had with longtime employees not being paid equitably with surrounding towns. Just something to consider going forward, as I don't want to become the town that just, pays market rate for the new hires. I'd like to take care of our longtime employees as well. But
Excellent point.
aside from that, I love the presentation of the budget. I look forward to, seeing how town meeting reacts.
And Lincoln, apparently you had some success with the finance committee last night as far as the format is concerned.
Yeah, I did. I'm pleased to report, I had some spirited conversation last night, but I'm pleased to report that, the chair of the finance committee identified at the conclusion of last night's meeting that he felt there was a consensus amongst the finance committee members that they were in support of the semi-consolidated budget that's before you. So that was nice to hear.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? If not, we can vote on the recommendation of the town administrator for warrant article 2 and look forward to seeing the rest of the warrant articles at our first meeting in May. Brian,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. And that takes care of those 3 items. So we're on to new business. And we can invite the town clerk in from the waiting room. Justin,
Sure.
and
She is allowed to talk now.
who was here to talk about in-person early voting. Dawn, you're on.
Hi, can you see me or no?
No, we can't see you, but we see your name.
Hang on
Or at
one
least I
second.
see your name.
I think it might have been me here. I'll promote you to a full panelist. I've locked the meeting, so
That's all right.
yeah.
So we don't get to see her, we just get to hear her? Is that what we're saying,
I
Justin?
think so.
Okay, well,
Oh,
let's
that stinks.
hear what you have to say, Dawn.
I brought props and everything, so. Anyways,
Here.
you guys had discussed at your last meeting about the early voting in person. We are required.
I think I just did that to her. Don, I moved you. You should be able to show your video now.
Okay, hang on. Start my video.
There you go.
Hi. All right, just so you know, state law, chapter 5 of the Acts of 2021 has made a lot of changes. They've extended some of those changes. They ended in March, but they've extended them to June 30th. One of them is being early voting by mail. It is required by mail. It is not required in person. So I just wanted to, I know you guys kind of already discussed your feelings and things like that, and that's great. But I want you to have the facts of cost. I know cost was one of the concerns and things like that, but I want you guys to know, the full impact that early voting by mail has on my office. I did send out an email to all of you about voter statistics. Did you get that? I thought that was quite interesting to see. So I'm kind of using that to base my numbers on. In 2020, we had 300 early voters by mail for the annual town election. So I figure it's probably going to be right about the same, maybe a few more, because we do have a few contested races. So you might get a few more. So, even if you did, maybe 400. So that being said, how the process works is early voting by mail consists of 6 pieces of paper. You have to send out an application, or the person downloads an application, or however, and the application then has to come back to my office. We then mail the person a ballot, instructions, and then there's 3 envelopes included. It's 6 pieces of materials at a cost of 70 cents each. They do not need to use that. They can still show up on election day and vote on election day if they decide to do that. If they do return the ballot and all the materials, they pay that cost. We don't have to pay the cost of returning everything. So they would return the ballot. However they choose, they can do it by mail. It can be in person that day. There's different things, different ways that we can get the ballots. They are not allowing us to do early ballot processing, which kind of stinks. So that's going to happen that night. Justin, you came and watched us do the early ballot processing, which was a huge help for closing the polls at the end of the night. 300 ballots, you don't think 300 ballots are a lot, but they are a lot. You know, you got to unfold them. You got to take the creases out so they don't jam up the machines. There's a whole process that has to happen. So anyways, back to the early ballot by mail. So the ballot comes back. What we have to do when that ballot comes back, when it goes through the mail system, is we have to take the envelope that the voter signed. We have to open up the mailed ballot back, and then we open up the envelope to see the inside envelope where the ballot is sealed in, and make sure that the voter signed it. So lots of times they don't sign them, so then we have to reject it and mail out. I'd probably say we get about a dozen of those, and it's usually the same people. They didn't see the red check mark that we put, because we put red check marks and everything. So then we mail them out another ballot. So anyways, we then take the envelope that they signed, and we have to compare that signature to the application, and then we have to compare that signature to the voter registration card, because you have to make sure that it wasn't your neighbor who grabbed your ballot, or you know, a kid's away at college and the mom voted for him. So it is a very timely process to do early voting by mail. Not that it's bad, I'm not talking bad about it. I just want you guys to understand the amount of work that it does put on my office. So that being said, whether you do early voting by mail or early voting in person, it's going to require extra hours and extra staff. Michael and Jen, they have their normal workload to take care of. So, you know, they can help out and things like that, certainly. And all these ballots, whether they're early voting by mail or in person, have to be entered into the computer. And that's basically what I have Jen and Michael do, because that's you know, I can't just have anybody doing that. So Jen and Mike are in charge of that, but I need somebody to slice them open. We have to alphabetize them, precinctize them, compare the signatures and all that stuff. So now let's go to early voting in person. And I know one of the issues that was brought up is that we are in the red zone, but we've been in the red zone for a very long time. And we went through a presidential with thousands of people coming through doing early voting. And we have a great system set up. There's a one-way in and a one-way out. I make sure that the stations are cleaned and things like that. As far as early voting in person, I shut down one section and we spray it all, and then so forth and so on. We clean the bathrooms, even though they are not for public, but people still have to use them. And so we have a schedule for that. My election workers are wonderful for helping me do all of that stuff. So early voting in person actually only involves the ballot and the one envelope. So basically the voter is doing all the steps that we would have to do on the in mail, the ballots by mail. The voter themselves are doing all of the process. They check in, they you know, put the ballot in, they sign it, it's all done. The same steps don't have to be taken because the voter's in front of you, versus when you get something in the mail, you have to make sure. Now let's get to cost. And another thing too is, you know, I look at it this way, kind of, you know, we are all still walking, you know, we are still in a pandemic. No matter how you look at it, things are laxed up a little bit here and there. We're going out to eat and things are kind of getting a little bit back to normal, but we truly are still in a pandemic. And the state is allowing this option for a reason. And I think maybe, you know, it's something to think about. You don't have to think about it tonight, but I mean, you have to think about, you know, you should think about it tonight, but you don't have to vote on it tonight. But I think if the state is offering it, they're offering it for a reason. You know, that maybe it's something we should think about providing to our voters. As far as costs, you know, I've thought a lot about this and, you know, ways of making, like everybody else, things a little bit less costly. So I've been in touch with James Dunn, who I've been using for the last, I want to say 3 years in several elections. And he provides me with students from the school, and we've already talked, and he would provide me with 2 students from the school that could work the early voting And they would be behind the shields and all the PPE that we had during, I mean, you guys know how secure it was as far as that goes. But he would provide me students for free of charge, which is fine. So we could save some money there. I would like 2 election workers only because I want supervision. We are going to be using new equipment. We are no longer going to be using Electech, which is a service that we use for electronic check-in. We've purchased poll pads through LHS, and they're a little bit different. You could actually put your license in and it would check you off the list. We can't do things like that at an election because you have to say your name in case there are observers and things like that. But for town meeting, it'll be great. People can just put their license in and it checks them off. But that's all another, that's a whole different presentation. So I look at it this way. What is it going to cost? It boils down to numbers here. And I have the money because of COVID. I've used a lot of COVID money to fund the other elections and things. So there is about 17,000, I think, Lincoln, I don't know if you've looked at it, somewhere around there, 15,000 the last I checked, in the election line, timing an election line. And I figured 2 election workers and 2 volunteers, it's probably going to cost $800 for the week of early voting. And I think with with Michael and Jennifer, their overtime, I have to pay them, overtime because, we still set up and we take down. So there's time, like a half hour before and a half hour afterwards that they stay extra. And, there could be other things. I mean, with elections, you just never know. I mean, I can't predict, on election night, I can't predict when we're going to get out of there. You could have a machine breakdown and have to hand count everything. So there is no, and that's why I asked Lincoln to change town meeting elections, because you just can't predict that stuff. So the other thing too is the postage. You're going to have to pay, for every ballot that you mail out, 70 cents. I know it's not a whole lot of money, but that's another expense if you do early voting by mail. I found that with the presidential and the September 1st election, it was kind of strange because they sent out the applications and the people checked off both elections, and a good percentage of the people who we sent ballots to, because we were required to, because they said they wanted them, showed up in person. So you paid the 70 cents, you did all the work, and then they ended up showing up anyways. Huh, Justin?
I did.
Yep. So anyways, it's a win-win. If you say no, that's fine. Like there's a win-win here because they can still early vote by mail. One of the other things is I asked other towns like around us, what are people doing? Most other towns are, the consensus is no for early voting. So I'll be honest with you, the consensus is no. The no towns are majority people who don't have like 2.5 override questions. Hanson, I just want to let you know ahead of time, Hanson is doing early voting in person. So sometimes that can be confusing because people think, we're Hanson. I know we are not Hanson, but we don't have a 2.5. So I don't care either way. I will do the work no matter what you decide, but it is something that you have to take a vote on. And if you do vote to do early voting in person, you have to set the hours. And my recommendation for that, I'll just give you everything and then you guys can talk about it or discuss it, is just, I had my calendar up. I've been sitting here, I have a dog snoring next to me. I've been following the dates for the town meeting because I have to have another voter registration and things like that. So, so with the election being on May 15th, and you have to stop the early voting 48 hours before. So my recommendation would be to have it just during normal business hours from Monday, May 10th to Thursday, May 13th, and be the normal business hours. So that would also include the 7:30 p.m. Evening hours on Tuesday. So just straight town hall normal hours. And I have to worry about the rest. You don't have to worry. I mean, I will assure you, if you do go with early voting in person, that all the safety precautions will be taken for the voter and for the workers and for the town hall employees. You know, we have a pretty good system down. If I can handle a presidential, I don't think this is going to be this is going to be a pretty easy one. So, but that's, anybody have any questions or?
I actually have a couple.
Yes, Brian, go ahead.
A couple of quick ones. Does the absentee process, is that the same as the early voting process as far as the envelopes and the scenario, the 6 steps that you said? Is it the same?
So yes, an absentee voter, but you can only absentee vote for 3 reasons. So it is for being disabled, and we have what's called permanent disabled. So at the beginning of every year, we send an application to, there's approximately, I think, 15 residents who have completed the necessary paperwork to be a permanent disabled, where we initiate the process. And yes, they do. They do have the 6 piece and the same thing, but those people have a tendency, well, they're the same 15 people, and then we have a few others that that do it. But yes, you are correct.
And what were the other 2 conditions? You
Oh,
said that-
sorry. So it's disabled. It's for religious reasons, and the other one is you're going to be out of town. So say your child has a lacrosse game or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, good. And which the early voting by mail is required, did you say, by the Secretary of State?
Early voting by mail is required. It is mandatory. But I think if you open the polls, a lot of people don't trust the mail. Mail, you know, they you know, they're not sure if the ballot gets there and things like that. Or some people want to vote in person. So, but I do have to say, another good thing to add on to that, which reminded me, is the state did open the portal to check your ballot, which was a good tool for the state elections, but it was never an option for municipal elections. However, their software team has created it so that somebody who does vote by mail can check to be reassured that, you know, we have a great drop box, we have a great system. We do work well with people as far as if you just choose early voting by mail. There's a, you know, they just drop them in the drop box and we check it frequently, or they mail them to us, however. But there will be no in-person. I am not going to make appointments to pick up somebody's ballot. Sorry.
I guess I'll just end with my a personal philosophy for me is I always thought it was election day, not election week. And so it's just, I guess I'm an old school type of election guy. So, you know, to me, it's up to the board what they want to do. But to me, it's election day is something special. And if you can't make it, absentee.
Okay, Randy, you had your hand up?
Muted.
You think to unmute yourself, though?
Sorry, I'll thank you. I'll thank you again, Don. You definitely cleared up some concerns I had from the last meeting as far as cost. Obviously, it's pretty negligible. The only other thing, and I don't know, I'm still trying to think this through, but the only other thing is, earlier in this meeting, we said no to people coming into town hall to fill out paperwork. And now we're saying it's okay to come in and fill out paperwork. If we didn't have to make a decision on this tonight, I mean, has the Board of Health weighed in on this, Lincoln?
Not to my knowledge. Don, have you had any conversation with the other members of the Board of Health on this?
No, I didn't. And one of the reasons why I didn't, and I understand, Randy, what you're saying. Like I said, it doesn't matter to me. Well, it kind of does. I don't want a lot of the extra work. But we've done it before. We did it in November. We did it in September. I mean, we didn't have a choice then. You couldn't vote and make a choice then. We are, the people aren't in the building for more than 15 minutes. It's an in and an out. It's not like somebody's coming in and fixing a copy or somebody's coming in doing a presentation. They're not in the building, 3 minutes. They're in and they're out. So I will gladly ask their opinion. I don't think it's necessary. I think you guys can make, that's how I feel. I think
On the contrary, Don, I think it is necessary. We have been very aware of the opinion of the Board of Health all through this pandemic. And we did have a discussion earlier today or earlier this evening about whether people could come in to conduct business one at a time at any time. And we said no, because we are in the red right now, in the red. We've been in the red for a couple of weeks. And that's one of the reasons why we've postponed town meeting, is because of that. So my two concerns the last time were costs, and you've taken care of that. And the other concern was COVID. And it still might be a concern. And Randy, I want to thank you, because I didn't put those two things together a couple of minutes ago, that we just rejected people coming into the building and now we're saying it's okay. So I'm at sea right now, but I think tonight is the night to make the decision whether we want to allow it or not.
So can I make a comment on that? I do believe that the DPW held a meeting in Town Hall in the auditorium last Monday, and they had public forum. I don't think anybody showed, but they had public forum. And I do believe the Board of Appeals are going to hold 2 public hearings or 3 public hearings in the building, where there's going to be, and those people are going to be sitting in, I know they're going to be distance, but they're going to be there more than 15 minutes. And
Don, that's true, but that's because there's a need sometimes for a board to have a public hearing.
Right? No,
And
I agree.
we okayed that based upon their being very strict about cleaning and about social distancing.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, Lincoln, do you have a recommendation on this?
Well, I
That's
guess,
somebody's dog.
That's my dog, and
And the dog is saying,
He's
Keeps
voting yes.
I have her locked away from me, so she keeps crying.
Lincoln,
I guess from my perspective, obviously there are the COVID concerns, and there's no easy answers on that, as we just sort of touched on. Since I'm asked, I mean, I always wonder if, in fact, if the goal is to increase and maximize voter turnout, I just know anecdotally from seeing elections elsewhere, not in Whitman, since I haven't been here during an election in Whitman, but in elections elsewhere, anecdotally, when I saw folks who were coming in to vote early, it seemed to me that they were people who were going to make sure that they vote regardless. And that, so these were people who, if they weren't going to be able to vote early in person, they would vote by mail, or they would vote in person on election day. And that these were folks, it was more of a convenience thing rather than if the goal is to maximize turnout. It appeared to me as though, anecdotally, that most of those folks were going to be making sure that they vote regardless because of who they are. But that's just my 2 cents, and since I'm asked.
okay, yeah, and that, what is sort of moved me towards the position that Justin had a few weeks ago was the idea that we want to encourage voter participation. And I believe that in-person voting is one way to do that. On the other hand, that this naughty issue of the pandemic and how we deal with that is a problem. And is especially inconsistent when we say on the one hand, you can't come in to pay your bill. And on the other hand, you can't come in to vote. So, Justin?
I was just going to say that last year I did work the annual town election for the first time, learned a lot and have a whole new appreciation for all of the work that goes into running an election. But there were safety measures taken at the time that did make me feel a little bit better about it. everyone was wearing masks, distanced. Even the voters coming through, everyone had to wear a mask, kept their distance.
Mhm.
I think it can be run safely, and we're going to have to open it on election day anyway. Why not spread those voters out over 4 additional days?
Well, that makes some sense too. It does. Yeah, Brian.
2 quick points. I'm looking at the sheet, Dawn, that you sent us, which was incredible information. I appreciate that. And I want to first say that I think that you and your team do a fantastic job on these elections. I'm looking at the registration number for the November election, and it's over 11,000, and that's pretty good for this town. That's got to be a high mark, I think. And to see that, almost 8,700 came in for 78%. That to me is wonderful. But the number that stuck out to me was the early voters of over 5,000. That's a big number. And I don't know if it was driven by the pandemic or the fact that they just didn't want, it was going to be busy that on election day, but those are huge numbers. And for you guys to get through that in November with really no casualties, I guess is
Right.
the best way to say it, is phenomenal. And you should be commended for that, you and your team. I agree with Justin on the idea. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that I'm trying to suppress votes, because I'm not. I think the more people that come and get involved with municipal elections is a good thing, and as well as town meetings. So as far as what Justin just said, makes some really good sense when we still have this pandemic. Then in your early voting last year was almost 300. So, I think everybody is understanding that the pandemic is still an issue here, and we need to make sure we safely get as many people to vote as possible.
Yeah, and there is a possibility that if they're coming in during that week, there's going to be smaller numbers anyway, because it's a town election, not a national election.
Yeah,
That it will make distancing easier on election day itself, because fewer people will be here on election day.
Yep.
So.
And maybe we'll be in the green then.
Yeah, maybe we will, but we're not going in the right direction, guys.
No.
Does anyone want to make a motion on this issue? We have a couple of things that we need to vote on while Dawn is here. One, we need to clear this up. I think we ought to do it tonight. And then we also have to warrant, you brought in some paperwork, Dawn, or you left some paperwork in the office about calling for the town election.
Yes.
So we can get rid of that now, because we won't have town meeting before that. Does anyone want to make a motion? Justin?
Sure, I'd move that we authorize early voting in person the week before the election during normal business hours, Monday to Thursday.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Yeah, I'll second that for one question.
Okay, yes, Dan.
Dawn, are you looking to possibly make this a customary thing? Early voting, or just this one?
It is not my choice. It's the choice of the state. The state is the one who makes the decision. So this law or the act is only good until June 30th. So after June 30th, there's no more early voting by mail or early voting in person, unless they there's a lot of special legislation out there to make it permanent. The only permanent early voting is on a state election in November. Is early voting is the only one that they've already made legislation for. Other than that, everything else has been on the fly, and they've basically just done it election per election. So.
All right, and one of your main reasons of wanting early voting is to eliminate the big crowds, we'll say, on that Saturday, to minimize it, so there'll be less possible of.
But you know what?
Anything.
People like it. It's, there's a lot of people out there who like having that option.
But we can't automatically call early voting without the state allowing it, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Justin, could you accept in your motion, subject to review by the Board of Health at its next meeting?
Sure, yeah, if they meet next week.
Okay.
So long as it's okay with the Board of Health, yeah.
Okay, the second, you okay that
Yes,
change
I
in the
second
motion?
it. Yes, yes.
Anyone else? Okay, well, let's vote. Brian,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. So we'll
There you
do,
go.
okay, subject to the Board of Health's review, we will have early person voting for the week before the election. And now I'd like a motion to sign a warrant calling for the town election.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, is there any discussion of that?
Can I just say something about this?
Good.
Why?
All right, what?
Why?
What?
We're about to say yes. Why? What do you?
No, this is a good thing. While we're talking about the election, I just want to throw in there, we've gotten the poll pads. So they're going to be new electronic check-in.
Mhm.
Usually we would have used them before a town meeting, but because of the new legislation with all the early voting and all this other stuff, we are allowed to use them for a town election. So we are going to do electronic check-in for the first time for a town election. One of the other new legislations was that you could get rid of the checkout table. I'm having a real hard time with that one. I could have during the presidential. I didn't because, checks and balances to me, I'm an old school town clerk. Believe it or not, I'm one of the older town clerks. They call me for opinions and things and I'm like, oh boy. But anyhow, I'm working on that as well. So, but I'm not going to get rid of it this election. I want to make sure that the poll books, because that is going to eventually be a permanent thing for electronic check-in for elections. And they're fighting real hard on the floor for that to be permanent. And the poll books that we have are great. Like I said, there again, you can just stick your ID in. With town meeting, they've actually promoted these poll books and said, if you want faster check-in, come over here. And in the big cities, people really thrive on that. And they just put their license in, it scans it, it checks them off the list. There's no mistakes. So I am going to be using it for the elections. That's something new. I'm very excited about it. I've never used these poll pads myself. I've seen them work. I know a lot of town clerks who've used them. LHS is a great company. That's who we have our machines from. They'll make sure that everything is up and running and things like that. But I am going to have at the end, this is for the regular election. We're doing it for early voting too now that if we do end up having it. But for the regular election, I am going to have just one person checking off the list. The list is only going to be just to make sure that I just have to make sure that they're right. And I'm so used to the paper list. So I kind of want to compare the two, but you maybe before I'm done being town clerk, you'll see checkout gone. However, one of the positions is a ballot box observer. So you're supposed to have somebody sit by a ballot box. You can also have a demonstrator so that when people come in, those are two positions that we've kind of eliminated to save a little bit of money. So I think I would still have somebody, because when people are done voting, they can kind of wander and maybe possibly put their ballot in the wrong box. And that at the end of the night can be devastating. So
Dawn, I'm trying to figure out what this has to do with what the motion that's on the table.
well, I just wanted to tell people about
Excuse me, Dawn.
About
The motion that's on the table is for us to call for an election.
right.
That's what it is. Okay, it's not about the mechanics of the election. It's just a call for the election.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know what it was happening.
Okay, if you might want to let the town know what's happening, and
Well, that's where I thought.
Maybe using the town website to explain some of these things.
Absolutely, I will do that.
Okay.
Hey, Don, get
thanks.
cable and do a show.
I already have that set up with Kevin. Thank you.
Oh, perfect.
Good idea.
Okay, that's good. I'd like to call for a vote on this motion then, which I can't remember what it is. It has to do with calling for a town election. Brian?
Yes, I guess.
Yeah, and it's on May 15th. Randy? Randy nodded. I think that's a yes.
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
And I'll say yes. Dawn, you've been a wealth of information tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to act on license renewals for the following license holders for the period May 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2022, subject to the submission of renewal fees and current tax status. And the categories are fuel storage licenses from A to O, junk collectors licenses from A to C, and junk dealers licenses from A to C. I'm not going to read them all, but those are the categories. Is there a motion?
So I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, Dan,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
and Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Next item is to act on the request of Michael Ganchard on behalf of Whitman and Hanson Dollars for Scholars to erect a fundraising thermometer on the front lawn of Town Hall from April through the end of May.
yeah, motion.
Second.
Second. Seeing no discussion, Randy,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Ryan, and
Yes.
I'll vote yes. And act on the request of Michael Ganchard on behalf of Whitman and Hanson Dollars for Scholars to declare April as Dollars for Scholars Month. Is
so
there a
moved.
motion?
So
Second.
moved.
Moved and seconded. Okay, Justin
Yes.
and Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Act on the request of Stephen Morse on behalf of the Whitman VFW Post 697 to hold its annual Buddy Poppy Drive at Stop and Shop in the Whitman Post Office on May 29th and 30th, 2021. Is there a motion?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Dan,
Yes,
Ryan,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Act on the request of the Board of Health for permission to use the animal shelter on Essex Street for a drive-through rabies clinic for dogs and cats on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Is there a motion?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Brian,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes,
and I'll vote yes. Act on the recommendation of the Council on Aging to nominate Mary Holland to serve as the town's representative on the Board of Directors for Old Colony Elder Services for the period of
oh,
June 1st,
nice.
2021 through June 30th, 2022.
Yes, motion.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, any discussion? Dan,
Yes.
it's a Tuesday.
No, I think that's great.
Okay, Brian,
Yeah.
Justin,
Yes.
and Randy.
Yes.
All right. Next item, take action to amend the 2/9/21 appointment of Lincoln Heinemann to the position of claim agent to reflect the term expiration date of June 30th, 2023. Our vote on 2/9/21 vote was for a June 30th, 2021 expiration date. The correct expiration date is June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion? Is
Yes.
there a second?
Moved.
Yes.
Second.
Have you guys smoking anything that I'm not seeing? Brian,
Legal in Massachusetts.
I know.
Yes.
yeah, and I can tell that you enjoy that. Randy,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan, and I'll vote yes.
Yes,
Take action to reappoint Sarah Lansing to the position of Veterans Agent, Veterans Graves Officer, Veteran Services Officer through April 30th, 2022.
so moved.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's see, Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Justin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. And what we need to do right now is to basically announce that we will not be having a meeting next week. And so we need to set the May meeting dates. Does anyone have any suggestions on those? What would be the best times?
that's time, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, good. Dave,
I couldn't resist.
somehow I've lost control of this group. Anyone have any suggestion on the days in May? Lincoln, do you have any?
Would the board like to, I would suggest either May 4th or 11th and May 18th or 25th. So I don't,
That's all 4 Tuesdays.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear. Since the board is, if maybe perhaps the board would want to return to its regular 2nd and 4th Tuesdays.
11th and 25th then?
Although, actually, could I back up a moment? I'm sorry. I would suggest that perhaps May 4th would make sense, and then you can
Yeah.
finalize the warrant at that time,
Right.
and the warrant
Right.
would be finalized for a month. So
Okay.
perhaps that would be a good
So
idea.
May 4th and May 18th.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
Good.
And I understand there is no need for an executive session tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Randy?
Yes.
Okay, Justin,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Let me think about it. Yeah, yes.
and I will vote yes, and thank you very much, guys, for your attention
you, Lynn.
tonight.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
we'll see you on.
All right.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Thank you.